Hello there and welcome to today's training. So I have a question for you. Have you ever been in that position where you felt a little awkward in a conversation or in a meeting because you were put on the spot? Or maybe it's as a result of the topic that was being discussed, or you just didn't feel prepared. Or maybe it is that every time you tend to get a little bit more nervous, and it's easier for you to be put on the spot and feel like, oh, I'm not sure what to say or how to say this or how they're perceiving me, and those kinds of situations. So if that is the case and you answered yes to that or any of those things that I just mentioned, then this video today is for you. So today what I'm going to do is unpack a little bit about why this is so important that you do what's necessary to make sure that you feel as confident as possible in those situations. So I'm going to share with you 5 things that I actually just shared with one of my clients. This happens to be a topic that's been coming up a lot for me in my coaching sessions, and so I thought if it's coming up there, chances are that you are probably, could use some of these tips that I shared with them as well. So this is what I want to share with you. First of all, if you have a meeting on your calendar and you're not quite sure, how you need to prepare for it or what's going to be discussed, of course, an agenda is always going to be important, right? So if you don't have an agenda, or the meeting agenda is not clear enough to you, and you're not sure exactly what it is that is going to be discussed and things like that, then I highly encourage you to reach out to that meeting organizer, whoever it is that is going to be running that meeting, and get a little bit more clarity up front. So that's number one, is getting a clear agenda as much as possible and asking for one if one is not provided to you. Now I get that sometimes time can be an issue as well. So if there's a last minute meeting that's popping up on your calendar, it might not always be possible to get all of the answers, but at the very least, do your part to try as much as possible to get some clarity so that you know and you can be as prepared as possible going in. So that's the first thing. The second thing is being really clear on the expectations of you. So what is expected of you in those meetings? So in other words, what is the role that you're there to play? Are you an observer in that meeting? Are you there to provide your subject matter expertise if you're called upon? Or are you a key component or key player in that meeting where you have they're looking to you to help them make a decision, or maybe you are the key decision maker. So there's lots of different roles that you would you could possibly play in the meeting, and of course it's going to be incredibly critical for you to know what are the expectations of you going into that meeting. What role do you need to play? And this is outside of just your position or your title or the area that you have responsibility over, right? And I would assume that if you are being called into a meeting, the people in that meeting, probably know overall, your title, your role, and your responsibility. But what I'm talking about is specifically your role in that meeting, so that there's no, confusion, that you don't feel like you're being put on the spot, but that you have time ahead of time to ask the question, right, as far as what the expectation of you is, and then also to prepare and plan accordingly. So that is number 2, is being really clear on what that expectation of you is and your role that you'll be playing in that meeting, and ideally what is the outcome that they're looking for from you in that meeting. The third thing is the audience. Knowing your audience is going to be so important, right, in any kind of situation, especially if you have a key part to play in that in the conversation. So you want to make sure you know who's going to be attending, what is it that they're there to provide, what are some of their roles that they're going to be providing, who's taking the lead in that, and then of those people that are there, thinking about, what do they represent? What area do they represent? What types of questions will come up? Can you anticipate from them? What do they tend to focus on a lot? What are some of their pain points? Some of the things that they tend to bring up and question over and over again? What are some things that they focus on? What's important to them? What are their top priorities? Things like that. Because the more you can mentally prepare for those things ahead of time, especially if these are people that you're used to working with, it makes it that much easier for you to feel confident and be more prepared going in. At the very least, thinking things through ahead of time, right? So you're not always going to know exactly what's going to come up in that meeting, but the more you can mentally prepare yourself and thinking about each individual person and what's important to them and what could come up from their perspective, you can also preempt some of those questions or some of those focus discussion points based on the agenda, based on what you know is your role and what the outcome of that meeting needs to be. So you can start to prepare and think about things from other people's perspective, put yourself in their shoes, and then see if you can start to think about what would I need to address or be prepared for ahead of time, knowing who's in the room. Okay, so that is number 3, is your audience. Okay, so here's number 4. There's always going to be those times, right, where you don't know the answer. You simply are not prepared, or you don't know the answer, and maybe it's just that you need to, do some more research, speak with people that might, be able to give you the best possible answer, or maybe you just need input from various sources. Whatever the case is, you are never ever going to be in a situation where you know the answer 100% of the time. Now there might be, maybe as you go along in your career and things like that, it becomes easier for you to have those answers on the spot. But the more your level of responsibility increases, it becomes that much more challenging, right? There's no way you can accurately preempt the questions that are going to come up. So number one, give yourself a break. Know there are going to be times where you're not going to have the answer, and that's perfectly okay, right? Leaders are not expected to know every single answer all the time. They just need to know how to show up in a way that still puts them in a really good light as a leader, and where they can still help to get to whatever that answer or that resolution is. So when you are put on the spot like that, when you don't put on the spot like that, and you don't have the answer, think about it ahead of time. How do you want to address those questions that maybe you don't have the answer to? So I'm going to offer a couple of suggestions to you that would be really helpful so if somebody's asking the question from the requester standpoint, that might be helpful for you to in your response to them. So rather than just saying, oh, I don't know, I'll have to get back to you, going a little bit deeper with that. So number one, making sure you really, really understand that you know the question. So you understand where they're coming from, you know exactly what they're asking for, so that as you try to get that answer, even if it's outside of the meeting, you're extremely crystal clear on what it is that they need specifically. So don't be afraid to ask those clarifying questions. Also, when you do that, right, the nice little side benefit of that is that it gives you time to process and to think through things as well. So definitely do that. Ask clarifying questions if needed to make sure that you are getting them exactly what it is they need. And sometimes even in asking the clarifying questions, you're going to be able to answer that question, whereas maybe before that you thought that you didn't have the answer. So definitely do that. But the other thing to do is, if you do not have the answer, is to walk them through, give them a level of understanding of what you're thinking and why why you need to take this offline and maybe get some answers. So that could be something along the lines of, I'm not sure, I don't have 100% of the of the information I need to give you the best answer right now, but here's what I need to do. I need to go and do some research on this. I need to look into XYZ. I need to have a conversation with this person because they have some expertise in this area. And so I'll be going and doing all of this to make sure that I'm giving you the best possible answer now that I understand exactly what it is you need and why. So that's going to be important as well. So you're giving them a deeper level of understanding without just simply saying, I don't know, I'll get back to you, because you never want to be that person that's constantly getting into that that constantly says that all the time. And my guess is you're not. But you also want to make sure you're helping them understand what it is that you're going to look into. And then of course the other thing, the follow-up to that, is you also want to make sure, and this is actually number 5, you want to make sure in this conversation, especially if you're taking an active role in that conversation, that you are recapping exactly what it is that you understood from this. So, I just want to so if the person that is running the meeting or somebody else is not recapping at the end, or right as you're being asked a question and you're saying, I need to go back and, make sure that I get you the right answer, and here's what I'm going to do to do that. You want to make sure that you're recapping. So you're saying, okay, this, from what I understand, this is what you're looking for. I'm going to do X, Y, Z to get you this answer. I'm going to, and how soon do you need that, right? You want to ask them the question before you jump in and say, oh, I can get that to you by tomorrow, because a lot of times we put a sense of urgency on it, thinking that it's more urgent than maybe it really is, right? And then so we get into this mode of firefighting constantly, and maybe the things that we really need to focus on take the backseat, and we don't ever want to get into that situation. So be really clear on what the urgency or the priority is for that person asking you the question, and don't ever assume that they need it urgently right then and there. Ask them, how soon do you need this? That will give you enough time to go and do what you need to do. Also, be really clear on how you're going to be following up and who needs to be included in that follow-up communication. So maybe, and I've heard of this in some companies, where the regular cadence for that is you send the response to the meeting organizer, and the meeting organizer will then provide an update to that meeting through email. So maybe it's a project manager or somebody like that who's responsible for then disseminating any follow-up information. Maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe you just need to contact that person directly and just send them an email or a message, or have a follow-up conversation. So be really clear on what that follow-up for you is going to be, because you don't want to leave that meeting and then leave that person in limbo, not knowing when you're going to get back to them, how, and who's going to be included as well. And there might be other people in the meeting where that's very relevant to them, and so you want to make sure that when you leave, you are very, very clear on what it is that you're going to be following up on, what information that you need to provide, as well as when you're going to be following up, who you need to be following up with, and also how. Is it a follow-up meeting? Is it a Slack message or Teams message, or is it an email or something like that? So just being really clear on all of those details. And the reason I bring up these 5 points in particular, so I'm going to go through them again. Number 1 is being very clear on the agenda and asking the person who is responsible for managing that meeting or running that meeting, exactly what the agenda is. Number two, getting clarity on what your role and your responsibility is in that meeting. Are you a decision maker? Are you, just there to observe and provide input as needed? What is it that they're expecting of you? What are the expectations and what is the outcome that they're expecting of you? And then number three, know your audience, know who's going to be in that room, so you can start to preempt and think about things from the audience's perspective, from each individual who's going to be there, especially the key people that are part of that conversation. So you can start to preempt and think about what do you need to be prepared for when you get into that meeting. And then number four, be prepared for having a response to when you don't know the answer, right? Thinking that through, playing it through, even verbally, like saying it out loud as well, right? Responding to, and just practicing out loud when somebody asks you a question and you feel like you don't know the answer, or you need to go and to research and things like that before you can provide the best answer. And then number five is recap. So make sure that when you walk away from that meeting, you are clear on the next steps, they are clear on the next steps, so there's no confusion, and that the expectations are completely aligned. That's one of the biggest things that I see when it comes to conflict within organizations or things like that, is misalignment of expectations. You want to make sure that you're taking every opportunity to align on those expectations, whether it's after a meeting, a conversation, email, whatever it is. There needs to be alignment so that there's no confusion and it doesn't create any kind of miscommunication or anything like that. So I hope that helps you. If you want to go a little bit deeper with this, to really know how to fully step into your confidence and really own that space and function in your zone of genius, what I call with my clients your leadership zone of genius, so that no matter what happens, no matter how difficult or challenging the situation is, no matter what the circumstance is, you feel rock solid in your confidence and in your leadership ability, and nothing can faze you, because we always gravitate towards those leaders, right, that are really solid, really grounded. It's not the leaders necessarily that have all of the answers all the time. It's the ones that know how to respond and react in situations that really creates that level of influence and impact that you're looking for. So if you want help with that, feel free to schedule a call with me. Happy to help you with that and see how I can best serve you there. You can go to shristasebastian.com/schedule. It's a 100% free call, no obligations there. But I would love to chat with you to see how I can help you with any of these things, or if there's something else on your mind, happy to help have a good discussion on that as well. So thank you so much for watching and for listening. If this resonates with you, please feel free to to give me a comment below if you have any follow-up questions or any thoughts on this. I would absolutely love to hear from you. I'm always checking comments and happy to get back to you and answer any questions. Also, just hear your thoughts, because I would love to provide more of this type of content, but I definitely want to make sure that it's actually helpful to you. So if you could let me know, that would be amazing. Otherwise, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and I will chat with you again soon. Bye for now.